September 2003. We are just moving along through the year 2003, getting close to the end. I don't know what I'm saying. Nothing new going on in my life, but I read a lot of books, so let's get to it. First book I read in September 2003, The Girls Got Bite by Kathleen Tracy. This is an unofficial guide to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So it's got behind the scenes stuff, um, an episode guide, so synopsis of all the episodes and quotes and different things. And it's not very well written. There are mistakes in it. And the author shares opinions as if they were facts, but just mistakes in what happens in some of the episodes. So, not the best nonfiction book for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The Girls Got Bite by Kathleen Tracy. I followed that up with Cloud of Sparrows by Takashi Matsuoka, or however you pronounce that. And this, let's check my notes. Takes place in Japan in 1861. They're opening up their shores to Westerners. Our main character is Lord Genji, and he has the gift of prophecy, and he has a vision that sends him on a quest. He needs to get to the Cloud of Sparrows castle, and there's a gunfighter who has come to Japan. There's a woman on the run from her past who has come to Japan. We're going to team up with Lord Genji and a couple other Japanese characters, and they're going to have adventures as they travel to get to the Cloud of Sparrows. The Shogun, I think, is trying to kill Lord Genji. But I like this kind of stuff. So, Cloud of Sparrows, Takashi Matsuoka. If you're into that feudal Japan samurai stuff. Then we have The Warriors by Saul Ulrich. This is the basis for the classic Walter Hill movie, The Warriors. Frankly, I think the movie's a little bit better. For those who don't know, the Warriors are a gang in New York, and they've gone to, I think it's Central Park, for this meeting of all these different gangs. There's one guy that wants them all to get along, basically. He's murdered. The Warriors are framed for it. They have to get back to, I believe it's Coney Island, their home turf, but they're traveling through the turf of all these other different gangs who are trying to capture them or kill them. And it's a great action flick. It's a good book with a big reveal at the end. I'm not going to call it a twist, but there's a big reveal that is not in the movie, and it's shocking. It's The Warriors by Saul Ulrich. If you're a fan of the movie, I'd recommend reading the book. It's not a terrible book. It's pretty good. I just think the movie's better. It's one of those cases. One of those rare cases where the movie's better than the book. After that, we have Way of the Wolf, Book 1 of the Vampire Earth by E. Knight. And this is a story that takes place in 2065. And the Earth has been invaded by essentially space vampires. And they've taken over the world. And our main character is David Valentine. And he's part of a special forces group who's fighting back against these vampiric aliens. That's the first in a series. I was very excited. I like to find a good series, but I was ultimately disappointed in it. I don't recall ever reading another one in the series. We'll find out eventually. Maybe we'll come across another one, but I don't think so, because I wasn't impressed. Way of the Wolf, Book 1 of the Vampire Earth by E. Knight. And then we have, I gotta set this up here, because I actually have this book. Oh, and I do have The Warriors, but it's buried somewhere. I know where it's buried, but it would have been too much work. More work than I wanted to do to dig it out. But This book I do have. This is Dial M for Monster by Steve Niles. Steve Niles, best known as creator of 30 Days of Night. This is a Kyle MacDonald, uh, well, it says a collection of Cal MacDonald mystery stories. Cal MacDonald is a private eye, down on his luck private eye, who can see monsters. It's in the world, there are vampires and werewolves and ghouls and all these other things, but for the most part, they mix in with humanity. Most people can't tell if someone is a monster. Cal MacDonald can see them for what they are. And his partner in his detective agency is a ghoul. And he, takes cases to help monsters, to hunt monsters, depending, because, not all monsters are bad. And this says, I love, in this collection of Cal MacDonald short stories, Cal encounters fresh horrors on every page, from flying brains to legendary woodland creatures. Apparently, I can't speak or read today. Flying brains, right off the bat, I'm in. But I love Cal MacDonald. I actually have a book that's the complete Cal MacDonald, so all of these individual books that I have that I've shown throughout this series are all collected in one book, but that also has uh, new material, which is why I grabbed it. Even though I already had everything in their original publications, I wanted the new material, so I also have a big giant book that's got everything in it. Dial M for Monster by Steve Niles, a fantastic collection of private detective horror. I followed that up with Buffy the Vampire Slayer / Angel, Seven Crows by John Vornholt. And this actually focuses on not necessarily Buffy. We have Riley, everybody's favorite government soldier, Riley, and his wife Sam, and they're working the Mexican border. They're working a case there where there's a bunch of deaths involving vampires, and they want some help, so they call in Buffy and Angel to help out. And that's basically what's going on. Riley starts getting a little nervous when his wife and Angel go undercover together. But if you're a fan of Riley, it's a good book. If you're not a fan of Riley, I mean, it's still a decent book, but probably not going to be your favorite. I know Riley wasn't very popular. I do know a few people that thought he was great, but overall, I think he was an unpopular character. But that's Buffy the Vampire Slayer / Angel, Seven Crows by John Vornholt. I'm going to go a little behind the scenes. I have this little beat up old notebook here where I make my notes, and I usually just write one word from the title. I don't have to write the whole thing down, so I know what the notes are referring to. And the first three things that I wrote down were all animals. I have sparrows, wolf, and crows. I was hoping to find a way to make everything animals, but it didn't work out. I don't know if anybody cares about this, but I thought I'd share that. Anyway, after Buffy, I followed that up with CSI Miami, Florida Getaway by Max Allan Collins. Of course, CSI Miami, the spin-off of CSI. I don't think spin-off means what it used to. Back in the day, a spin-off literally was they took characters from a show that they thought were popular and gave them their own show. Nowadays, it seems, the networks plan a spin-off and so introduce the characters into the existing show so that people know them now when their new show comes out. One of the biggest examples is on Arrow. They introduced Barry Allen, the character Barry Allen. I don't know if he was the Flash yet. I don't think he was. But they introduced him in one or two episodes of Arrow, knowing full well they were making the Flash TV series. But then they call it an Arrow spinoff. It's not really a spinoff. That's just me ranting. But I believe that's what they did with this. They simply, actually, I'm not even 100% sure that's how they did it, that they introduced characters from CSI Miami on regular CSI in an episode or two and then gave them their own show. Um, they did that up for NCIS and NCIS Los Angeles, but anyway, CSI Miami, Florida Getaway, Max Allen Collins. Um, you have this guy from Las Vegas, which is where the original CSI takes place, who runs to Miami to get away from a murder, thinks he's going to get away. The people in Vegas call the people in Miami and say, hey, we think this guy committed a murder. Can you help us out? That's basically what's going on. I watched a little CSI Miami, but I'm a big fan of Max Allen Collins, and that's mainly why I was reading these books. But that's CSI Miami, Florida Getaway by Max Allen Collins. Then we have The Eyre Affair by Jasper Fforde. That's Eyre, Eyre, as in Jane Eyre. This is the first in a series with the main character whose name is Thursday Next. And it's this alternate world where I believe there's time travel, there's cloning, and literature is the most important thing in the world. And somebody in this book, somebody is kidnapping characters out of books. So imagine you're reading Dracula, or say you've read Dracula. You know the book Dracula. And then you decide to reread it one day, and all of a sudden, Abraham Van Helsing isn't in the book. So that's what's going on. Someone's kidnapping literary characters, and Jane Eyre is kidnapped, and so Thursday Next has to go into the book to figure out what's going on. It's a really wild concept. I don't know if I've explained it well at all, but I find this sort of thing fascinating, especially because now you can have multiple genres within this single book because the characters can go into different books and things. So Thursday Next has to figure out who's kidnapping these literary characters, why they're doing it, and figure out how to put a stop to it. It's a really fascinating book, The Eyre Affair by Jasper Fforde. Fforde. Then we have Money for Nothing by Donald E. Westlake. Our main character is Josh Redmont, and he's just a normal guy. And I think like 7 years ago, he started receiving checks every month, one check a month for $1,000. Eventually, he tries to deposit it. It clears. So now he's been collecting $1,000 a month for 7 years. And then this guy shows up and says, hey, you're a sleeper agent. We are activating you. Those were paychecks. And now you're part of this assassination plot. So he has to figure out what the hell is going on, how to avoid assassinating somebody, and how to, I don't know, pay back the money that he took. It's one of those great, lighthearted, but action-packed, twisty and turny Donald E. Westlake books, and one that I'd be interested in reading again. I do have one Donald E. Westlake book I absolutely want to reread, and that's The Axe. And I want to reread all the Richard Stark Parker books. That's Donald E. Westlake, but this might go on the list of Donald E. Westlake books I'd like to reread. Anyway, Money for Nothing, Donald E. Westlake. After that, I read Fluke, or I Know Why the Winged Whale Sings by Christopher Moore. Another animal. I didn't put whale down, though. I'd already broken the chain of animal titles, so... Anyway, in Fluke, I forgot to write down the main character's name, but he's studying whales. He wants to know what the whale songs mean. And when he's out one day with his crew studying whale song, he sees, there's whales, obviously, have to be if there's whale songs. And one whale, its tail comes out of the water and it says, "Bite me," on the whale's tail. Nobody else saw it. when he has pictures, but when he gets his film developed, that picture is missing, and then his apartment is trashed. What the hell is going on? So this is your typical funny Christopher Moore story, but not one of my favorites. It was fine, didn't dislike it, but nothing about it stood out, especially to me. But if you like Christopher Moore, Fluke, or I Know Why the Winged Whale Sings, it's not the one I'd recommend to start with, but you could give it a try. Why not? Then we have The Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks. Brooks, best known for writing World War Z, or possibly for being Mel Brooks' son, but probably for writing World War Z. But this came out before World War Z. It is a spoof of a survival guide that's all about surviving a zombie apocalypse. So it gives you all the tips you're going to need to surviving the zombie apocalypse, as well as like the history of zombie attacks going as far back as the BCs, sometime in the BCs. Um, and so just um, a fun book. I like this kind of thing. I've never read a real survival guide, but the cover looks like those survival guide covers. It I don't know at all if it's the first of this type of spoof, but it's the one that seemed to me, it's the first one I'm familiar with, and it seems after this is when a bunch of other ones started coming out. Um, so the Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks. If you're into zombies uh, and you want to have a good laugh, then I definitely recommend this book. The penultimate book for September 2003, Smallville Shadows by Diana G. Gallagher. And in this one, I didn't even bother to write anything down. Um, Someone is found dead, I believe, and Jonathan Kent thinks Lex Luthor had something to do with it, but Clark Kent thinks there's something else going on. And then, in typical sort of TV, especially CW TV fashion, there's a new girl at school whose father is a scientist. Gosh, I wonder if they could possibly be tied in with what's going on. And she wants to join the school newspaper so she can be part of this investigation. And there's, I think, an underground lab where people are making monsters. Uh, Typical Smallville type stuff. I think the Smallville books feel more like just an episode of the TV show than something like, say, Buffy or some other, um, I hate to say better, um, things, like Supernatural. Yeah, they feel like part of the show, but don't feel like just an episode of the show. Supernatural books, Buffy books, definitely Star Trek books. And I can't speak for every single one of these things, but my experience is this. But the Smallville books, to me, I think felt most like they were just an episode of the TV show, plucked from the TV show. But that doesn't make them bad. They're still, if you like the show, you're going to find the books entertaining. Smallville Shadows, Diana G. Gallagher. And the final book that I read in September of 2003 is Gun Truth by Ed Gorman, another great Ed Gorman Western. This time our main character is Tom Prine, and he has become a deputy in this small Western town because he thinks it's going to be a relaxing, for the most part, relaxing gig. You know, what's going to go on in a small town? Well, stuff starts going on, and it turns out that maybe all of the people in town aren't who they seem to be. And I don't mean that in like an Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of way, but yeah, Ed Gorman, always a solid writer. Gun Truth, a fun Western. There you have it. Those are the books that I read in September of 2003. Question for this video: do you have a zombie survival plan? Um, this is a question that Kaylee Dobbs of Happy Goat Horror uh, asks, tends to ask anyway, the subjects of her print interviews. She has a different ongoing question for people in her video interviews, but there are quite a few of her print interviews. She ends with this question. I don't really, because I'm just that much of a slacker. Um, I tend to think, well, I'd go to the Walmart. It's pretty close by. It's going to have obviously tons of food, things to use as weapons, but it's also got huge glass doors. I mean, not huge, I suppose, but which could be easily broken. I suppose it's possible to find a way to barricade them, but I also think too many people are going to think that way, and too many people are assholes, and it's just going to become riotous in there. So I don't have a bunker or anything. I'm not prepping. So I would, I'd like to think I wouldn't die too quickly, depending on how surprising things are. Like if I woke up and it turns out my family's all turned into zombies and they're standing over my bed, I'm not sure if I would survive. But I have some survival skills, but it's all a matter of, as in, I think most zombie stories, it's the humans you have to watch out for. That's the big problem, and I don't trust humans, which is why I like animal attack stories, because I'm rooting for the animals. Because yeah, people down with people. Anyway, so yeah, I have no plan, but I do like reading about zombie survival. I like a well written zombie story. But what about you? Do you have a zombie survival plan? What would you do in a zombie apocalypse? I might try to travel down to Alabama, where my sister and brother in law live, because they do have everything you need to survive a zombie apocalypse. They have a shit ton of guns, and I believe a shit ton of survivalist stuff. So if I could get there and get in without getting shot, I might have a chance. Uh, Let me know your zombie survival plan, your thoughts on zombies in general, down below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments down below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. If you're on Blue Sky, I'm @EL Smith, although I almost never post there. And that's all I've got for you this week. So until next week, read more books.